could see the tourists' pink hotel, hear school bells ring down creek. Needlefish embroidered the mangroves. Mullets slapped the surface, rippling light. The swimming pool was an unfinished experiment. Shortly after my father's death, I saw my mother and her reflection consider suicide. Not able to swim, she yet lingered at the edge. Hibiscus only lasts a day, shriveling into a withered fist. The crown of thorns was overgrown. Drunk on pepper tree berries, cardinals crashed into the windows. Rosary peas will kill you, but they are so shiny, perfect, red and black. Part of you listens for the rattle. Another part expects the snake. Rosary peas are really beautiful. They make them into jewelry, but if you swallow one, it's poisonous. So it's kind of for me, Florida is this sort of overrun, fecund, dangerous, strange place. And in fact, I think I'm going to read another poem about Florida. This is called Alligators. And it's a true story. My father told the story to keep me from the water's edge. They found her rings inside its belly. For years I dreamed of their contradictions, supine indifference, indolence, belied by fleet, sudden speed. Sitting in the sun like furniture, they seemed too heavy to lift themselves, jaws full of whimsical ivory, purring a bass note, rumbling with swank primordial need. They were here first, an original unpardoned sin. Dad said I was too big to kill with one bite, but I could doubtlessly be grabbed and dragged underwater. The dance you do then is called a death roll. The alligator leads. In the house of my dreaming, they lay around, immobile, except to flick a vexed trunk-like tail. On the ceiling were pulleys, taut wires. You had to tuck your feet up, roll yourself into a ball, and at all costs never touch the thronged floor, trapezing above the ordinary dangers. Ornament. This is actually a poem that came out of my husband Frank and I do many, many walks in Grosse Pointe Park at Windmill Point Park. And so we keep going back there because it's convenient, but also because it's gorgeous. It's the space where the Detroit River flows into Lake St. Clair. There's a pier there. Ornament. All I saw was the tangle of filament, the complexity of loops and knots. I couldn't gauge the length wound round the branch, or what strange force could produce such a fierce, irrational record. In the center of the lines was the body of the sparrow who had struggled, the circumference dwindling with each launch from the branch, each push, each angle attempted. Maybe he bathed in lake's shallows, wings churning a tiny spray when he was caught by the shiny idle hook. Like an ornament nested in a milky macrame of sunlit cords, he was desiccated yet whole, an artifact at the center of a shimmering testimony of foreclosure. And this last summer, Frank and I went back to Florida, and so this is one of the poems that I brought back from that trip. This is called On Going Back. Small things brought comfort. Matchweed, toad flax, the shaking of sea grape in a squall, a loitering stand of sandhill cranes. Out the window, a glimpse of osprey along the berm, sprinting sandpipers, the resolute attendance of blue herons, shadowing fishermen who cast chest deep, knowing what's always been known. Some of the catch will fall their way. The sand, the same, each grain a legend, shells not husks or hulls, but artifacts, their cause disappeared, profusion and plethora, even the sea turtles lay some eggs as prey. Awakened by the moon, they race towards circumstance. And this is just poems, probably just that I find in the backyard. This is one of them. Honeysuckle. I won't pull its wiry stems, since the flowers are cylinders of ambrosia the hummingbird loves. It crowds the roads, swamps the fern, surfaces among glossy hydrangeas' airy flower heads. The fence is heavy with green. Twining shoots sneak halfway across the yard. I linger, fussing with whatever is unruly, wait for the crescent of iridescence, a diffusion of air. At some point in this, I'm about halfway through writing a new volume of poetry. So many of these poems were written, anywhere from 4 years ago to 6 months ago, and I'm struggling with, as many of my students are struggling with, how do we take observational lyric poems that happened before it seems as though the earth has shifted with the election and with our new president. So at some point I realized, although these things are about small things in some ways, observational things, the thing that links my poems is maybe the theme of predation and predators. And so I'm not going to despair. I'm going to continue to write about predators, and I'm going to be just fine. So my protests are quiet, but nevertheless, they are present. This is called Ghost Nets, and it is inspired by the large industrial fishing nets that get abandoned by corporations, and although they're no longer used to catch fish or whatever, they still float around killing things. So this is about them, ghost nets. Left or lost, ties cut, unfinished business drifting, blue sectioned by abandoned lengths, tangles of wafting filament, tidal streamers, barnacle-starred. A spider would be a mercy. We assumed the sea was vast enough to consume what we cast away. Gossamer graveyards softly kill what becomes bait, then slow-mo massacre predators, now lure for more. Keep fishing, zombie labyrinth. Time won't stop you. The silent reef serves as your hinge and anchor. And I think I have time maybe for 2 more poems, and I will choose carefully. This is a poem that I'm trying to write that historicizes the book that I'm writing. I live in Grosse Pointe Park, not far from where Alter and Mack cross, near Detroit in Grosse Pointe Park. And it's one of the starkest socioeconomic divides that you can find. Basically 100 yards away from one side or the other, you are in a very different sort of place. And so there are many tensions along those borders, and there's much clumsiness in terms of how Grosse Pointe Park can negotiate and be a good neighbor with Detroit. And so this is a poem, and I'm not entirely happy with it, but it is what I can do right now. It's called Alter Road, which is the road that begins at the Detroit River and kind of runs up to Jefferson. And along with Alter Road is also a canal that serves as an additional border. And on the Grosse Pointe Park side, there are a number of streets that have been barricaded by the city to prevent traffic. So, Alter Road. The park that follows the edge of you, so full of what is free to come and go, requires a pass to enter. Every single time, a gate, groping for the card, barcode, scan gun, I live here, so the guard waves me forward. Altar Road, Fox Creek Canal, a cyclone fence, poison ivy, evidence of roads now barricaded. Track north along these fissures, follow the intentions. You'll see the houses are the same except for money in all the forms it takes over time. Here, the world invested. Across the street, you're on your own. Boundary, consequence of symbols, fault line of hate. I overlooked you. Right in front of me, you're governing. An untold story, a foregone detail. 3 miles of right now, woe. You are the unsayable said in the contours and silhouettes of our representation. And I will finish with a poem from What Remains that serves, at least at the time that I wrote it, as an ars poetica, a statement about what I think about art and why I write it, but hopefully it's not like an essay. It's called Where the Work is Brave, It is Also Good. Where others would drown and sink, the willow thrives. It sets down so many roots like whitened knuckles. They not only grip the bank, they become the bank. Any twig will propagate, broken branches on the ground grasp earth, seek moisture, become tree. It would be an honor to be this tree. Early spring, the willow shakes her hair free, leans into the water's edge, red-winged blackbirds strung about for adornment. Her work is all around her. She is her work. Ancient medicines distill in her sap and bark. Fables have twisted into the ropes of her leaves. A holy aura scents winds that move through her. Thank you so much.
Glen, I discovered we have the same dentist. You mentioned his name.
Yeah, Dave and Sean are pretty good.
Yeah, and he would be interested in any group of people who are sharing a single tooth, I'm sure. And Carolyn, there was an image that just flew right by me as you were reading. I grew up in Kentucky, and we had hibiscus plants in the backyard.
Oh yeah.
And the line was hibiscus
Lasts a day, it shrivels to a